Michael Davis, a renowned black federal prosecutor, was slammed against a patrol car, humiliated, and falsely accused by two corrupt officers who thought they could bury him under lies. They underestimated him. What unfolded next shattered their scheme and ignited a national reckoning. What he did next will shock even those who've seen it all. But let's start from the beginning. The story opens on a vibrant street in downtown Chicago, where the hum of passing cars and chatter of pedestrians creates a lively backdrop. Michael Davis, a sharp-dressed black man in his mid-30s, emerges from the courthouse, his tailored suit and confident stride, a testament to his recent legal triumph. The weight of his success is evident in his smile, but his moment of celebration is abruptly shattered. Two officers block his path. Sergeant Ray Harper, a middle-aged man with a hardened demeanor, and Officer Jack Miller, younger but no less intimidating. Harper's voice is low and authoritative as he speaks. "Excuse me, sir, but you match the description of a suspect." Michael freezes, confusion clouding his face. He reaches into his pocket and calmly pulls out his ID. "There must be a mistake. I'm an attorney. See for yourself." He extends his badge, the glint of the metal unmistakable under the sun. But Harper and Miller barely glance at it. Dismissal hangs in the air as Harper retorts, "Let's just make sure, counselor," with a sneer that barely hides his contempt. Without warning, the officers begin to frisk him, their rough hands patting him down as though he's a common criminal. Around them, the world slows. Pedestrians pause, their curious glances quickly turning to looks of unease. A few pull out their phones, recording the scene as murmurs grow louder. "What's he done?" someone asks. "Nothing. Just walking while black," another mutters. Michael keeps his composure, though the tension in his voice betrays his rising frustration. "This is illegal," he says firmly. "You're targeting me because of my race. I won't stand for it." Harper smirks, leaning in just enough for Michael to hear. "Save it for the judge," he sneers, before adding a degrading comment under his breath. The scene becomes heavier, the humiliation palpable. The officers revel in their abuse of power, but the crowd grows angrier, their voices murmuring louder. Phones continue recording, their cameras capturing a moment that cannot be unseen. The tension mounts, and an undeniable sense of injustice hangs in the air. At the police station, Michael Davis is shoved into a cold, dimly lit holding cell without ceremony. The sound of the heavy metal door slamming shut reverberates through the small space, sealing him inside with an oppressive sense of confinement. His sharp protests are ignored, and his repeated requests to call his law firm are met with indifference. "You'll get your call after we process you," one officer mutters, his tone dripping with dismissal. It's a hollow excuse, and Michael knows it. He paces the narrow cell, his polished shoes now scuffing the dirty concrete floor. The hours crawl by, each minute weighing heavier than the last. Sitting on the unforgiving metal bench, Michael leans forward, his hands clasped tightly together. His mind races, not with panic, but with a growing understanding of the gravity of his situation. He thinks of the countless stories he's heard. Black men arrested on flimsy charges, their lives upended by a system that devalues them. The realization is bitter. Today, he is that story. Meanwhile, in the precinct's back office, the tension between Sergeant Harper and Officer Miller brews. Harper slams a folder onto the desk, barking orders to fabricate evidence. "We need something that sticks," he growls, his voice low and venomous. "He's just another suit who thinks he's untouchable. Not on my watch." Miller hesitates, his hand hovering over a blank report form. His eyes flicker with doubt as he glances toward the closed door of the holding area. "Are you sure this is necessary?" he asks, his voice quieter than he intended. Harper glares at him, his jaw tightening. "Just do your job," he snaps, shutting down any further questions. Miller reluctantly picks up the pen, his unease evident in his furrowed brow. Back in the cell, Michael sits motionless, his breath steady, despite the chaos swirling around him. He forces his mind to focus, calling on his years of legal training. He knows despair will only serve the officers trying to break him. Instead, he begins to plan, his resolve solidifying. The system may have caged him temporarily, but it hasn't won. Not yet. When Michael is finally granted his phone call, the officer escorting him to the phone expects him to contact a family member or a friend. Instead, Michael calmly dials a number he knows by heart, a direct line to the federal prosecutor's office, where he serves as one of their top attorneys. His voice is steady, but firm, as he identifies himself and explains the situation. The reaction on the other end is immediate. Concern turns into outrage, as his colleagues realize the gravity of what has happened. The desk officer, standing nearby and overhearing part of the conversation, stiffens. His smug confidence wavers, as Michael's authoritative tone makes it clear he's not just another detainee. "You should prepare yourselves," Michael says into the receiver. "This will be handled swiftly." Unbeknownst to Sergeant Harper and Officer Miller, Michael has spent years building a reputation as a key figure in prosecuting cases of police corruption. His work has brought down officers and precincts far larger than this one, and now his colleagues have every reason to act decisively. Within hours, a team of federal agents descends upon the precinct, their presence unmistakable and their intentions clear. Harper, who had been lounging with a smug air of triumph, feels his confidence crumble as the agents demand Michael's immediate release and an explanation for his arrest. Their questions are precise, cutting through the thin veneer of Harper's fabricated case. The falsified evidence Miller submitted is quickly exposed, and under the weight of scrutiny and his own growing guilt, Miller folds. He confesses everything: the planted evidence, Harper's orders, and their deliberate targeting of Michael. The room is tense, but the shift in power is palpable. Harper's face, once smug and arrogant, now betrays fear and disbelief as he's placed in handcuffs. He sputters protests, but the agents ignore him. As Michael steps out of the precinct, a free man once again, the tide has turned. The weight of injustice begins to lift, replaced by the growing certainty that justice will be served. Days later, the courtroom buzzes with tension as people fill every seat, their eyes fixed on the proceedings. Michael Davis stands at the plaintiff's table, his calm but commanding presence in sharp contrast to Sergeant Harper, who sits rigidly, his once arrogant demeanor replaced by unease. Harper is charged with abuse of power, falsification of evidence, and racial profiling, charges that have now captured national attention. The trial becomes a lightning rod for debates about systemic racism in law enforcement, drawing media outlets, activists, and citizens alike. Outside the courthouse, a diverse crowd gathers, holding signs demanding accountability and justice. Inside, the atmosphere is electric as Michael takes the stand to deliver his closing remarks. "This isn't just about me," Michael begins, his voice steady but charged with emotion. "It's about every person who has been silenced, humiliated, and dehumanized by those sworn to protect them. It's about a system that too often turns a blind eye to corruption and injustice, leaving the vulnerable to fend for themselves." His words cut through the room, each sentence landing like a gavel strike. The courtroom remains silent, the weight of his testimony hanging heavy in the air. People in the gallery nod in agreement, some wiping away tears, others sitting frozen in thought. Michael's voice grows stronger as he concludes. "We cannot change what has happened, but we can decide what happens next. The question is, will we?" The ripple effect is immediate. Outside, the crowd erupts in applause and chants for reform. News channels broadcast his statement nationwide, sparking protests in cities across the country. Social media platforms ignite with hashtags like #JusticeForAll and #ReformNow, amplifying the calls for systemic change. As the gavel falls and the court adjourns, Michael walks out of the courthouse, victorious once more. But this time, his victory is not just personal. It's the spark of something larger. The camera lingers on a mural nearby. Michael depicted as a towering figure in a suit, holding scales of justice, with the bold words, "Never stop fighting," painted above. The story closes, leaving the audience inspired, with a sense that change is possible when courage meets resilience.